Wow, we made it, guys. We've actually made it. I can't actually believe it, but this series, my favorite series on this channel, has made it to the 10th consecutive part. Well, I mean, I can believe it because I picked them, but still, 10. And after this particular episode is finished, there will be a complete list of the top 50 greatest forgotten horror movies of all time, and hopefully it will have highlighted some awesome horror movies that will be deserving of a second chance for us to take a look at. And I know I say this a lot, but I couldn't have done it without you guys, so thank you. As it goes for every other part, part 10 is for you. So let's see what else we've got lurking in our dusty treasure trove of horrors. Hello horror fans, what's going on? And once again, welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, top 5 scary videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host, Jack Finch. Today, we curiously take a look at the top 5 scariest forgotten horror movies, part 10. We made it, guys. Roll the clip. For the curious amongst you, that scene was from 2002's Death Watch, starring Jamie Bell and Andy Serkis in a terrifying hybrid of war horror and barbed wire, which for the astute amongst you managed to feature in part 9 of this series. And you know what, guys? I was so chuffed that quite a few of you remembered how awesome that movie was, and I guess that was proving the point of this series. So again, thank you. And also, it's a friendly reminder for those of you that haven't yet seen it that you probably should take a look in if you haven't yet had the chance. It's pretty great. Anyway, talking of pretty great, let's get on with the show. Kicking off at number 5, The Resurrected, 1991.
It was uncanny. It could have been a portrait of Charles himself.
What do you mean?
I mean, Kerwin looked exactly like Charles.
And what better way to celebrate part 10 of this series other than to highlight a forgotten gem from our other favourite facet of horror fiction, Howard Phillips Lovecraft. The truth is, I'm gonna level with you guys. Creative Commons and the statute of limitations of H.P. Lovecraft's works have not exactly been kind to the true mastery of some of his finer works. And because of that, since the late 70s through to pretty much now, some of the more prolific cinematic adaptations of Lovecraft's stories haven't exactly been great. Granted, I'm not including the works of Stuart Gordon or Brian Yuzna on that point, but it remains the same. Quality and Lovecraft adaptation don't exactly go hand in hand. However, there is one independent movie that quickly sank into the swamps of forgotten horror, and if you can get your hands on this movie, The Resurrected is certainly worth a look at. And also, I should probably preface this with the fact that The Resurrected is kind of difficult to acquire, although I'm pretty sure Scream Factory and a few other outlets have purchase options, so yeah, PSA declared. If you can get it, please get it. And also, it's probably important that we highlight the fact that Dan O'Bannon, as in the writer behind Alien, Total Recall, and many other awesome movies, was the director behind this movie in his second ever attempt at a feature film, his first being The Return of the Living Dead. Yeah, exactly. Dan O'Bannon is reason enough to check this movie out. Directed by O'Bannon and written by Brent Friedman, based upon Lovecraft's 1927 novella The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, The Resurrected stars Jane Sibbett and Chris Sarandon as Claire and Charles Ward respectively. And yes, that is Jane Sibbett as in Carol from Friends, and if you thought Ross Geller was an unabashed psychopath, then Charles Dexter Ward has got something to say about that. You see, Claire Ward hires a private investigator, John March, played by the awesome John Terry, to investigate the increasingly bizarre actions of her husband Charles. And well, if you're familiar with the events of Lovecraft's story, then you'll know it makes for a pretty sublime descent into macabre horror madness. I'll say no more, this movie is a worthy adaptation. It paints a perfect portrait. By no means is it perfect, but it's certainly worth a look. Swinging in at number 4, The Hole, 2001.
No, Mike, listen.
Please stop torturing yourself, okay? Please. It's not important anymore, okay? It's not your fault.
I have to tell you something.
You know what? I was pretty damn adventurous as a kid, but then I saw The Hole and I thought twice about poking my head around abandoned underground bunkers. I'm just kidding. You can't keep a good spelunker down, but still, this movie is certainly food for thought when it comes to making consequential decisions as a young adult. It's also absolutely crazy that this movie was made nearly 20 years ago. That's 2 decades. But also, it's quite enlightening to know that 2001's The Hole was certainly a demonstration of capturing a time and a place, and I think that's exactly why this movie is so appealing in hindsight. This movie is so 90s/early 2000s that it hurts, and it exemplifies a period of British horror where the new millennium had made way for a much more transatlantic kind of horror. And that's not necessarily a bad thing at all, but please know that this movie is dripping with more angst than a Hawthorne Heights record that just made pen pals with a bootleg Dirt and Grey poster on a live journal thread. Yeah, exactly. Directed by Nick Ham and written by Ben Court and Caroline Ip, The Hole is based upon the 1991 psychological horror by Guy Burr. It tells the tale of 4 well-off preparatory students, Liz, Frankie, Mike and Jeff, who after spending a weekend partying in an underground bunker, as you do, find themselves locked inside with no way out. And oh yeah, did I mention that it stars the awesome Thora Birch and Keira Knightley respectively, who throughout this movie are both absolutely brilliant alongside Desmond Harrington and Lawrence Fox as the two convincingly decadent male blackguards Mike and Jeff. This movie is awesome and it's reminiscent of some of the more shocking psychological thrillers that flew under the radar during the mid to late 90s, but more importantly it made that style palatable for an emerging horror audience. Really, if this movie flew past you, I'd certainly give it a second look. Yeah, the plot is a little obvious, but it's not about that, it's about performance, and again Thora Birch is remarkable in this movie. Also, it has a supporting role by Embeth Davids, aka Miss Honey from Matilda, and all is good in the world, so give it a watch just for that really. Next up at number 3, The People Under the Stairs, 1991.
Children misbehaving in the basement and one in the wall doing his business God knows where.
And talking of performance, wowza, I'm not sure if I'll ever forget the terrifying sound of Mrs. Robertson screaming at Alice to get in the bathtub, but truth be told, we have covered this movie before, quite a while ago in fact. But considering it's our 10th episode, I think it's proper that we pull it back out of the vaults or the strange crawl space between the walls and give praise to one of Wes Craven's strangest and most overlooked of horror movies. You see, riding off the success of Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm not entirely sure whether people knew what to expect from this movie following its release 7 years later. I mean, between that you had 1988's The Serpent and the Rainbow and 1989's Shocker, so stylistically I'm sure audiences were expecting an amalgamation of the three. You see, it's not that at all. The People Under the Stairs was a flat-out curveball from Wes Craven, and this movie is so unashamedly weird that several of the taboo themes that it handles could have gone the complete other way with audiences. But you know what? They didn't. Strangely enough, at the time this movie was a surprise commercial success, and I think in that sense it affirms exactly why these forgotten movies are so important for us to rediscover now. Yes, granted, The People Under the Stairs is perhaps one of our more recognisable forgotten horror movies, and in that sense, please don't begrudge me if you've heard of it, you're not the only one. But hey, it's episode 10, and I'm trying to make a point here. Horror cinema has so many of these gems that deserve a second look in, and for new emerging audiences of horror, there is a lot to be learned in The People Under the Stairs. Surprisingly enough, this movie is a weird satire of late-stage capitalism, and as far as characterization goes, it proves the point that with two weird enough villains and two awesome actors to deliver it, you can make even the most nonsensical of plots turn into a worthy horror show. Really, Brandon Adams, Everett McGill, and AJ Langer are awesome in this movie, but Wendy Roby as Mrs. Robertson steals the show. If you haven't had the pleasure of watching this movie quite yet, give it a look. Coming in at number 2, Ghost Story, 1981.
We can feel things watching us and following us. And we dismiss them as fantasies.
Tell me guys, how is it that a worthy cinematic adaptation of one of the greatest works of horror fiction from the 20th century manages to find itself falling down the back of the dusty old shelf without a second look in? Beats me. But you know what's worse? This film has got 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. How? I do not know, and yet whilst this movie is far from being perfect, I think it's down to us individuals to be the judge of Ghost Story's true horror merits. For those of you that are already aware of Peter Straub's colossal horror novel of the same name, you'll know that it's one of the finest demonstrations of how to spin a classic ghostly tale, and whilst that particular horror trope is often overworked and underpaid, if you're looking for a familiar ghost story of the cinematic variety, then this movie is exactly that. I'm still scratching my head as to how this film became so poorly received, and yes, I do understand the criticisms of it, and I don't think that they're too far from being wrong. Ghost Story is indeed slow, it is drawn out, it irks on being rambling at points, but my word, if this film isn't the demonstration of creeping dread in a candlelit room flickering with the shadows of a haunted past, I'm not sure what else would suffice. And also, this movie is a different kind of forgotten cautionary tale that could certainly use a look in this day and age. Oh, also, did I mention that this movie stars frickin' Fred Astaire? Yeah. Exactly. Directed by John Irvin and written by Lawrence D. Cohen, Ghost Story is set during the frigid winter of 1979 in the small New England town of Millburn, where four elderly friends, the businessman Ricky Hawthorne, the lawyer Sears James, Dr. John Jaffrey, and the mayor Edward Charles Wanderley, convene for their weekly gathering. They are members of the Chowder Society, an informal men's club that gets together each week to tell tales of horror whilst they sip cognac for the sheer joy of it. I'll say no more because this film needs its slow creep of a narrative to get going, but as I said, this movie is all about performance. Fred Astaire, Melvin Douglas, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and John Houseman undoubtedly carry this film as the hallmarks of cinema that they are, and Alice Krige is also remarkable in this movie, but part and parcel of Ghost Story depends on which way you view the resolution of its closing scenes. There is a real sense of something remarkable in this film that I can't quite place, but it's worth finding that out for yourself. You see, it was said that during the filming for Ghost Story, Fred Astaire felt that he was going to die or be murdered, so much so that he considered dropping out of the production. Ghost Stories. They really can get to you. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, Symptoms, 1974.
Did you hear that? What? There it is again.
And for the number 1 entry of part 10 of this Forgotten Horror Movie series, we have to highlight the literal definition of a forgotten horror movie. Really, following its completion and subsequent premiere at the 1974 Cannes Film Festival as the first ever official British entry, Symptoms pretty much disappeared several years later. You see, the original prints of this movie were missing for over 3 decades, with the last ever showing of this movie being on the BBC back in 1983. After that, poof, gone. Disappeared with no clue as to why, when, or who had them. For many years, bootlegs of Symptoms were circulated privately by collectors, but between 1983 and up until recently, this movie was effectively forgotten from the halls of horror cinema. And then, in February of 2016, the British Film Institute saved the day, and now, as well as being available on DVD for your own collection, is also available on YouTube right this minute. So please guys, check it out. Because Symptoms is a remarkable entry in horror cinema, and it stars one of the most underrated female actors in 1970s British horror, Angela Pleasance, who is indeed the daughter of Donald Pleasance, Dr. Samuel Loomis himself. Written and directed by exploitation horror aficionado Jose Larraz, Symptoms tells the tale of the reclusive Helen Ramsey, who invites her friend Anne to stay with her for the weekend at her family's estate. And by estate, I mean absolutely huge English manor covered by a dense impenetrable forest that hasn't seen a glimpse of the outside world for the past few centuries. Warning signs already, right? You see, Helen has been away for years, working as a translator abroad before returning to her family's native England, where she had spent her childhood alongside Anne before leaving. The point is, there may well be reason for that, and soon we realise that Helen is full of far more inconsistencies of a much more terrifying kind of manner. I'll say no more because in classic British exploitation horror kind of fashion, this movie relies on its twisting and turning narrative to keep us on our toes, but most importantly, visually speaking, this movie is the definition of visual dread. This movie is just creepy to watch. It fills you with a weird sense of dread, its lingering camera is unnerving, and the performances from both Angela Pleasance and Lorna Hellebrand are terrifyingly brilliant, with Peter Vaughan, who plays Brady, also being of note. You see, as far as forgotten horror cinema is concerned, Symptoms is perhaps the closest that we'll ever come to defining the term, and that's why it takes our number 1 spot for part 10 of this series. Look how far we've come. Well, there we have it, horror fans. That list for the top 5 scariest forgotten horror movies, part 10. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree, or are you just impressed that we've made it this far? Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as any choice picks of your own. And who knows, part 20? Yeah, now that would be something. Before we depart from today's video though, let's first take a quick look at some of your more creative comments from over the past few days. First up, DH says, "Eat bollocks, Jack." Cheers, pal. I needed that one. Next up, Gary Abbott says, "Here's a rundown of the excellent movies that have been covered so far," and then just manages to list literally every movie we've covered in this series. So my point is, thank you so much, Gary Abbott, for taking the time of listing each and every movie that we've covered in this series so far. Hopefully this part 10 will give you a neat little add-on for the complete list. I quite like even numbers, but 9 is a pretty good number as well. Whatever. Cheers, buddy. You're doing a grand job. And finally, the real Thanos says, "Reality Stone looks good on you, Jack. Thanos." And cheers, buddy. It's working out well, actually. Just wasn't really feeling the Power Stone, you know? Heavy is the crown. Ooh, sorry, buddy. Too soon? Yeah. Anyway, on that alternate reality note, that's what we've got time for in today's video. I don't know what I'm talking about. Cheers for sticking around all the way until the end. If you're a fan of this video, or just top 5 scary videos in particular, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe button, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host, Jack Fiend. You'll be watching top 5 scary videos, and until next time, you take it easy.